Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our Changing Lawyer webinar series, which occurs monthly. And today's topic is around examining the millennial workforce, and we'll touch on the impact to user adoption and their impact on adoption, as we know that that's a very hot topic today as we speak to investing in technology from a firm perspective. And obviously, as Latera Microsystems being a software platform, that's a piece that we can speak heavily to. A quick introduction of not only myself, but our team that I'm a part of. We've really focused heavily on evangelism, and the definition of evangelism really is about bringing good news, right? And that can be both from what Latera Microsystems has to offer to the legal market, as well as what the legal market needs from a software vendor. And for many of you who have been a part of our recent demonstrations or anything as a single entity here at the beginning of the year, we've focused heavily on the document lifecycle, which is really providing a ecosystem to the lawyers where they can quickly produce high quality work product without the fragmented aspect of the legal desktop, which we're all accustomed to. So I have 10 years of experience in the legal technology field, and more so this year have spent a heavy focus on working with lawyers and partners, understanding their challenges, and then facilitating conversations with the technical sides of the law firm, knowledge management departments, user experience groups, to really ensure that the investment from both ends is being leveraged. The discussion topics, or what we like to call the learning goals today, are what you probably saw on the landing page when you signed up. I would kind of want to jump into the millennial personas. The term millennial is not new by any means, and it's actually thrown around quite often, but we'll speak to the different personas and work habits that come from the millennial space. We'll even get into the Gen Y aspect of things, and I think from a baseline perspective, it might be important to mention, full disclosure, that while I may, as a presenter, focus heavily on the millennial pieces here, we will speak to other generations and how they work, and that Gen Y aspect, which is really for individuals who maybe are born within the millennial timeframe, but work more similarly to the Gen X population. We'll talk about how flexibility over FaceTime is something that's become more and more important from not only your end users, but what the clientele expects. We'll talk about acknowledging that there's a different way of communication today's day and age. We'll talk how that's not all about agreeing with it or conforming to necessarily, but acknowledging that that's how individuals prefer to work. We'll talk a little bit about there's an app for that, which is really my mindset to how people who have grown up with technology their entire life expect to resolve problems, and then obviously the adoption aspect that we talked about at the beginning. So as we get started here, I wanted to bring up a couple of stats, and what you see in white is just in general, nothing specific to legal. And the orange is specific to legal, right? So why are we having this conversation today? One of the big reasons is that for the first time, we have a workforce where the majority is of the millennial population, right? So 35% at the end of 2017, and it's even grown more, and there's projections that show that over the next 2 years, we'll have 71 to 73 million millennial workers in the professional environment. And by 2025, 3/4 of the workforce will be millennials, right? So there's a quote that we'll see later on that these are the next wave of CEOs and founders and so forth. So that's a big number there that happens within just a couple of 7 years if we take it from today. The orange numbers here show that currently today in the U.S., 43% of the lawyers are millennials, and that's over 576,000. And another big number here that I think impacts what we'll see on the next slide, and part of the reason we're doing this is that 71% are likely to leave their current firm within 2 years, right? So it's not against the loyalty aspect of things, but it's that firms and corporations and companies are built on a foundation that is based on other generations. And we constantly find that our younger population is looking for more, looking for different values, and often looking and continuously looking until they can land in the right location. So why are we having the majority of this conversation? A big part for us is to help firms attract and retain millennial lawyers. We know that from that stat that they're moving a lot. We know that from a perspective that we'll get into, that they've grown up with technology, and we start to understand their expectations. And ultimately, what we hope to do is help firms attract and retain, and do so obviously through technology and some methods in which we can implement that technology. So as we go through this, we talked about there's some personas that I want to bring up, and this was brought from entrepreneur.com. There's really 5 personas. The first is the homebody, which I don't think is anything unique actually to the millennials. You'll see there it talks about Gen Y workers and even in the Gen X population. But the idea that working remote should be feasible, right? That's something that ties very closely into the cloud first strategy that Microsoft has, ties in very closely to the ability through mobility and technology to be able to accomplish a lot of your job outside of the desk and the cubicle. And as we see, that's part of where that value from a flexibility perspective tends to be really strong with the millennials. The next is the night owl, right? So it's the 9 to 5 aspect, which is somewhat gone away. It's no longer needing to be in at 9 a.m. or having to stay till 5. It can be doing some work from the homebody aspect. It can be doing some work in this particular case at night later on when you feel more productive. And what we see here is that almost 20% of millennials claim to be those night owls, right? So the ability to do work at different times, not necessarily where, but when you feel comfortable doing so. And that's important, obviously, for staffing and support and so forth. The multimedia tasker, and this is a big one that we've been discussing in our ILTA road shows around evangelizing the document lifecycle, which is that there is evidence that shows individuals are spending only 40 seconds focused on one screen at a time before their attention is diverted to something else. And that can be notifications on your phone, that can be ads, that can be pop-ups, that can be a whole nother screen. But that's down from, I believe, like 1 minute and 15 seconds in 2015. Even getting less and less, where our attention span is less and less. So many individuals who are jumping between different devices and screens as they are working. The hobby lobbyist one, this one I think is just all about what we'll get to into the end, which is the entrepreneurship of the millennials, the mindset that it's not necessarily financially focused from a professional career, but maybe something that is cause-worthy, right? Being able to donate, or the philanthropy aspect of things. If you're a fan of Shark Tank, you'll see on Shark Tank constantly a lot of the proceeds of the companies that are being pitched to the sharks are being donated to a charity and a cause, and that's obviously an important element to them. And then the one that I think we see probably most commonly, and we talked about already, which is the nomad, right? Which is the maybe lack of loyalty to the current organization that you've been a part of, the jumping around to find what fits, kind of the mindset that the grass is greener elsewhere, and making that opportunity to try to find a position that meets all of your core values, provides you with your expectations, and allows you to work in a mechanism that is comfortable for you. So as we talk about that, we mentioned that the millennial population prefers flexibility over FaceTime. And what does that mean? So that means lower value on the actual aspect of FaceTime, right? As we talk about the night owl, doing work late at night, midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning, does not necessarily coordinate very well with having face-to-face meetings, right? So the mindset that I can work when I want to work helps add to the fact that there's less of a value on FaceTime. We'll see a little bit more of that at the bottom. The high value that millennials place on work-life balance, I think that everybody's seen that, the flexibility. A lot of companies, maybe not necessarily in the legal space yet, have gone to this unlimited PTO mindset, which is to encourage having the best user base and that people will be there if they want to be there, and they won't if they don't want to be there, and it eventually weeds itself out. But it's to try to move away from the fact that everybody's taking Thursday, Friday, and Monday off in November and December because you have a use it or lose it type of PTO system. The billable hour becomes congruent with millennial workers, right? So again, this is about where we're working, when we're working, the mindset that timekeeping and productivity should be separate. We've seen this also with client demands, which is another big piece that we'll get into, which is that this isn't just about our end users, right? This is about our clientele and how they expect to work. And those fixed fees are obviously a pressure that we've seen. And some of the stats that we've even looked at is that 20 to 25% of revenue for some larger firms is being based on alternate fee arrangements and no longer the billable hour. Embracing the use of technology where and when they please, right? So mobility is the biggest piece. And I think this is one of the conversations I consistently have with IT is that lack of concern for security. And I think that being able to, and we'll see this on the next slide, proactively provide the functionality and technology that is capable of doing what they're looking to accomplish helps them prevent individuals from taking those shortcuts or accomplishing what they need maybe without the concern or the focus of security. And then this last piece, if you've heard me give any demonstrations or presentations over the last 3 or 4 months, has been something that I've spoken to heavily. And this is really just, again, about the mindset of understanding how the millennial population works, and the fact that Domino's was in a lot of financial pain. They were declining year over year and since 2010, and their online orders were less than 20% of their overall business. They moved that to over 50%, and what they did was simply allow people to order a pizza through texting, tweeting, or Facebooking a pizza emoji. And with just being able to do that pizza emoji, they had over 500 signups on the first day that they introduced that, where people signed up, put in their favorite pizza order online, and then from that point forward could use that pizza emoji. The management and C-levels of Domino's said that the two biggest factors that pushed this were the ability to get this down to a 5-second exchange, understanding that there's flexibility over FaceTime, not having to interact with individuals, and that there was wordless communication, the ability to communicate in a mechanism that people do today. And again, we'll see this on the next slide. This isn't saying that this is the method that you should conform to. We all have our values. We all come from different generations where it may make more sense to pick up the phone and put in the order, but there is a group and a population of individuals that would prefer to work in this mechanism. And I would encourage you to look at the Domino's case study because that shows that is the case and it has been successful for them. This is something that I pulled from our Changing Lawyer, and I probably should have said this at the beginning. If you're unfamiliar with the Changing Lawyer, it is a publication, a yearly and annual publication that we have at ILTA, the ILTA conference every year. It's also digitally available, so I'll show that here at the end. But it's sourced from 6 different market researches and questioning and a variety of stats and graphs. And one of them that I thought was really applicable to this was to just show that everybody cares about pay and benefits and financial aspects, but you can see that the decline in the millennial population from baby boomers and Gen X, as 80% as opposed to 85, consider that to be the most important. You can still see how strong it is for the flexibility, and that even the Gen X, Gen Y millennial population of the remote working from home and different hours. And then I like to kind of show here that on the far right, the not working excess overtime, right? So again, the not putting in the 12 to 14 hours a day, it's more of a work smarter, not harder mentality. And this just shows how this is starting to shift for those millennial values. So I think this is probably the biggest theme and hopefully takeaway from this presentation, which is about acknowledging the habits of what we've discussed, right? And that's completely different from understanding or agreeing with them. I just used the example of picking up the phone to accomplish something. We may see that as still the best approach for us personally, but what we need to understand is that there is a variety of individuals who don't answer the phone, who expect to text to communicate or to be able to use social media in order to do that, right? So acknowledging that that's a preference in how those individuals prefer to work and how they would prefer to get their product and their services delivered to them, it allows us to empower our end users proactively, right? And that can be through different technology. That can be through chatbots. That could be through apps. That could be through mobility. That could be through a variety of technology that coincides with how they work in their personal life, because they're going to translate that into their professional life, right? And it helps prevent that finding a way example that I brought up, where people are going to accomplish what they need to accomplish, and maybe not in the best method or the most secure method. And what we want to do is get out ahead of that and understand those things. And I think one big piece for us is understanding that the individuals who are coming in from law school are using technology, right? They may not be using the same exact technology that you are, but they've grown up with technology their entire life. They've been using it in law school. They come into the firm, and often culture or this rite of passage mindset has sheltered them from the ability maybe to ask for the technology that they want. So it's important to reach out to your users. We use it instead of selling internally. It's now evangelizing to understand what would they expect, what would they want here. And we know that that's going to pay heavy dividends into the retention and the retaining of, summer associates and so forth. The nice piece about this is then we can start to anticipate, well, why would they want something like this? When would they want to use it? Where would they want to be, right? And that all ties into the nomad aspect of jumping around and the other personas of being a night owl and things where you may not be working in that standard 9 to 5. And then the last piece on here has been really, really successful for the driving of adoption, right? Social media type of mindset, the ability to speak through SharePoint or forums or Microsoft Teams, allow word of mouth to spread through the avenues that they use today, which is that social media mindset, as opposed to maybe expecting somebody to speak up or go out of their way to voice their mindset, right? So if we have that engagement, we're capable of understanding it. If we present it in a way that makes sense from a technology perspective that they're accustomed to, that helps, but also giving them that avenue to speak back. And we've even used that to be able to champion video campaigns where you have an individual who's putting together a quick YouTube video that is type of YouTube video mentality that's internal to say that here's what I've used in my day-to-day, right? A testimonial that is in a social media type of perspective. Or a platform for vocalization. We've seen a lot of firms who are putting together innovative technologies and these tech committees with partners, but also we've seen a lot of success in the associates, right? Senior associates or someone who is very tech savvy who wants to have a say and wants a voice for the rest of the users. So being able to put in situations where that can be socialized helps with not only the adoption, but the proactivity of finding technology that allows lawyers to accomplish their job. And some of the surveys we see is that when asked through a survey that is filled out and is anonymous, there's an overwhelming majority of individuals feel they don't have the necessary tools they need to do their job, and that can be because of the firm culture of this is how we used to do it when I was an associate. This is the manual process. So I have referred to this group of individuals as there has to be an after that, right? There's this mindset that there's no reason I should have to do something like this that is all that unenjoyable, right? So keeping in mind that this is the first generation to be born purely in the technology, having it since day one. The focus on attraction of meeting their expectations that they've experienced in their home life and in law school. Again, they like to work for a cause. So often in tying some incentive to that's cause-worthy has been really successful. The retention has been really important, right? It's allowing people to focus on the more desirable work. The technology that we're talking about often is to eliminate some redundant tasks redundant tasks that people are looking to eliminate from their day-to-day anyway, the unenjoyable aspects of your work habits. And then remembering that I think the greater theme here is that this is better for serving the workforce, which are our clients, right? Those are our clientele. People are going to be feel more comfortable buying from people who communicate in the same methods as they do, who are very similar to the way they are. And looking at those numbers at the beginning of the presentation, we can see how fast that they're growing. I put a little video here to the right-hand side. There is a little bit of sound, but you don't need to hear it. But if you haven't seen this video, I think it just kind of speaks to the expectations, in the sense that this little girl has a Game Boy, and you can see that the expectation is to push the screen and have the screen do something, right? With the touch screen capabilities, right? It no longer makes sense to have little buttons and controls. So keeping in mind, again, that the goal here is to acknowledge some of the habits of individuals, and understand that this is an even younger generation that's coming through, right? Where not only have they been exposed to technology their entire life, but everything has been touchscreen, right? And that's not always the way that it's been. A couple other things that I talked about. So from a cause perspective, I'm sure everybody in their locale has experienced some sort of straw banning. This is one that is home to us in Chicago, the Shed Aquarium that we have. So there's a hashtag out for shedding the straw, right? Which is all about getting rid of the plastic. And this is the population that's really focusing on making the world a better place after, things have ruined it, from whether that be pollution or, individuals who are doing things to hurt the ocean in this particular case. This is also another quote just keep in mind, which is that millennials won't just be the next generation, or will be the next generation, won't just be the next generation of board members. They'll also be founders, right? And that they're all about making the world a better place. And then from Forbes, you can see here that it says that individuals are more likely to buy items associated with causes, right? And this ties into everything that we've talked about. So it's a population that I think, if we understand what drives them, what incentivizes them, the way that they choose to work, again, not necessarily making that change our habits, but just being aware and conscious of those preferences, and maybe trying to implement some things that allow them to accomplish their job and find more joy and value in their job on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to look to see if there are any questions. In the meantime, what I do want to do is jump out here to the webpage. It does look like there was a couple questions. One was just, I joined a little late. Will there be slides and recordings to be shared at all? Absolutely. There will be a email that's sent out that's a recording of this. If you would like the slides as well, those are something that we can absolutely get to you. So I'll work with our marketing team to make sure that that's made available. The other piece here that I'd spoken to is I want to jump out to my browser here. First and foremost, if you found any joy in this, or any of our other additional webinars that you'd like to join, you'll be able to see that through Latera.com webinars page. So I don't think there's an active link to it, but it is a live site. You can see today's webinar, and then we'll have some things around the learning series, which are product-based, as well as industry insights. So there's kind of 3 webinar series that we offer. I did just see another question jump in about Latera Microsystems representation at ILTA. Absolutely. I believe we have 30 individuals going. Myself, members of my team, such as Simon Dandy, Sherry Capel, and all of the sales and customer success and executive individuals from our organization will be there. We do have a booth, we have the demo room, all that. So if someone hasn't reached out to you, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to meet, schedule time, and sit down together. I also want to talk about the publication. So this is the digital publication for The Changing Lawyer at Latera's website. We can also send this out. This has a lot of market trends, industry trends, some of the workforce stuff that we pulled, a lot of stats. We constantly are updating it, and there will be a new annual publication, hard copy, available at ILTA. So feel free to stop by the booth and grab one of those. And the other thing I just want to speak to, because I think we have 8 days left, is that this year we are doing the Changing Lawyer Awards. So there is the ability to nominate yourself, an individual that you work with, your firm, for a variety of categories: Disruptor of the Year, Most Innovative Law Firm, CIO, and so forth. That's something that we are going to facilitate. We actually have a panel of judges from the industry. I think the only judge that we have internally would be our CEO. But there's a significant amount of individuals that have a good following in the industry who will be voting on this. And it's really to provide recognition for those who are challenging the industry to be forward thinking and driving motivation with that. So with that being said, we're about a couple minutes here from the top of the hour. We'll end on that note. We hope to see you at ILTA and hope that you found some value in presenting on the millennials and things that you can do to drive change and adoption throughout your firm. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.